And those numbers look a lot better.
2,500 an hour.
2,500?
At 24 hours a day, that is 60,000.
60,000 each day.
That's 21,900,000 Jews a year, if ever there were that many.
In January of 1942, 15 members of Germany's high command met outside Berlin in what would come to be known as the Wannsee Conference. The purpose of the meeting was to outline Germany's plan to exterminate the Jewish population in Europe entirely. Out of the meeting came the blueprint for Hitler's final solution. A new film called Conspiracy dramatizes this largely forgotten meeting that was pivotal to World War II.
60,000 each day.
That's 21,900,000 Jews a year, if ever there were that many.
We are also constructing the means of disposal, which will obviously depend upon the process of combustion.
Yes, it will be industrial in nature, large commercial gas-fed ovens, no residue to speak of.
Conspiracy premieres on HBO Saturday night at 9 p.m. Joining me now is one of the stars of the film, Stanley Tucci, who you may have just seen in that clip. He portrays the infamous Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann, who was hung in Israel after being captured in Argentina. I'm pleased to have Stanley back at this table. I've seen this, and just seeing the talk about it like that, it is the banality of evil.
Yes. Yeah.
As
Hannah Arendt said. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think that's the thing that's so interesting about the piece. That was the thing that attracted me to it, and probably everybody, is that it would be seemingly undramatic, but it is, I think, one of the most dramatic pieces that I've ever seen. I mean, looking at it objectively, about this awful happening, because it is so banal. Yeah. It was a business meeting.
Yeah, over dinner with wine, and they're talking about the extermination of a race and how they're going to do it. Yeah, and with little objection. Yeah, you know, some occasionally pockets of resistance that were overcome. Right, and they come into this. It's just stunning. It's like people coming in for a retreat at some mountainous resort to discuss corporate strategy.
Exactly, that's what it was. It was trying to figure out a way to consolidate the power. Taking all these different factions and putting them in one room together for an hour and a half, wining and dining them, this beautiful place, and particularly people who had come from the front, and people who hadn't, had been sort of living in Warsaw, not living well, so on and so forth. Bringing everybody in, wining and dining them, and having them. It's pretty horrifying.
Yeah, and this ought to be said as well. They know that the dialogue can be reasonably accurate. Because Adolf Eichmann, the character you played, was responsible for taping it and for having it transcribed, and there were only, 18 copies made, and only one survived?
There were 30 copies made. 30. One survived, although it was interesting. The minute it was, I don't believe it was taped. It was, however, it was written down, but those minutes were so edited. Eichmann edited them, then Heydrich edited them, then Eichmann edited them again, then Heydrich.
Because they feared?
Because they feared. They never wanted this to be written down. So it's all very vague, and there are lots of different euphemisms, which you actually see them figuring out what the euphemisms are going to be in the meeting. When they say evacuation actually means mass killing.
Right. Ken Branagh plays Heydrich.
Yeah.
Who was Heydrich?
Heydrich was Himmler's lieutenant for all practical purposes, and some people.
Himmler, head of the SS.
Yeah, yeah. They even believe that he was, in some way, the most responsible for the Holocaust. He was a zealous anti-Semite, and it was even been suggested that he was himself part Jewish, which was one of the reasons he was such a zealot. And he became known as the Butcher of Prague, because he was so vicious. And when he was killed by Czech partisans about 3 months after this meeting, Hitler had, I don't know how many thousand were killed in retribution.
Because he admired him so much?
Because Hitler loved him. They loved him. They revered him. He had one of the biggest funerals ever, I think, that the Nazis had ever thrown.
Any reservations about playing these characters at all? Because it would just be so distasteful to your stomach.
Yes.
As well as your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that when I was first asked to do it, I thought, do I really want to do this? And what is this going to say? And is this, how is the story going to be told?
Right.
Is this going to be some sort of gratuitous something?
Yeah, something that's just looking for numbers because it's another Nazi story that seems to attract audiences.
Yeah, and then when I read the piece, I thought, no, this is an incredibly unusual piece. I've never seen anything like this before. So I was only too happy to do it because to me it's a very, very important story. And it's a story that you just can't tell enough.
All right, roll tape. This is another segment, excerpt here in which you're talking about Eichmann speaks at the table.
Last summer, we ordered the construction of 20 mobile gassing trucks, using their redirected exhaust back into the chamber. 3 such trucks have been in use since last month. At the Chelmo camp, now called Kumhal.
Already constructed, under our noses.
In each truck, you can get in 40 to 60 Jews at a time. In fact, the more you have in, the faster it works.
When you look at the doing of this thing, there's a lot of material about Eichmann.
Yeah.
I mean, and how much time do you have, and how much were you desirous of investing in understanding him?
Well, I was most desirous to understand him. And then I realized that I couldn't, the more I read. And I realized that I don't think anybody could. There were so many differing views of Eichmann. Some people say he was a brilliant organizer. Others say he was not organized at all. Some say he had a wonderful memory. Some say he had no memory. Some say he was very bright. Others say he was as dumb as a post.
Right.
In the end, my goal, my job, was to simply make him human, and to simply make him, which would make him more horrible.
And more incomprehensible.
And more incomprehensible. And to make him just a facilitator for this meeting, but to also show that he did have information as to what exactly was going on behind the scenes. But he was in a way a brilliant kind of politician. He was liked by many, including many Jews, when he would first have meetings with them. He would enable people to trust him, and then suddenly he'd come crashing down.
Because they were, as I remember, because I think I read, they did all the interrogation that took place of the real life of Eichmann in prison in Israel. I think it was made into a book.
It is. It is a book called Eichmann Interrogated, which Michael Berenbaum actually,
who was put this together,
yes,
this project together.
Yes,
who's also the curator or the director of
the Holocaust
Museum in Washington.
And he edited that book and translated that book. Yeah.
So he obviously knows more about Eichmann than most.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you hope, and what does he hope, is the contribution of this beyond its role on the HBO schedule and a vehicle for an audience coming to?
Yeah, I think that it's, as I said before, I mean, I think that it's a story that has to be told over and over and over again, and I think that's what the creators hoped for, Loring and and the director Frank tried to get this thing done for like 8 years or something, almost a decade, and no one would make it.
Wouldn't touch it.
No, nobody would touch it. See, that's why to me HBO is so extraordinary, because they do things that studios won't do, but they also do things that independent studios won't do. You would never see some of the stuff that we see if it weren't for HBO. I have to say. I'm not just saying that because they employ me.
No, I mean, they don't employ me, and I agree with you.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And
in fact, I think others are beginning to copy them. I mean, I think the realization is that not by doing things with some courage, you can also attract an audience.
You can, and they're lucky; they're not beholden to advertisers and so on and so forth. But with that courage, you will attract an audience, and all different audiences.
Right. Take a look at this. This is another problem. What is amazing here is that this, to me, is that you probably see a kind of, even though this is an extreme, microcosm of sort of Nazism, in a sense. In the end, they all go along. Even though there's some resistance, it's distasteful, it's, and probably they went home and had a family.
Yeah.
And a nice dog.
Yes.
And all of that.
Absolutely.
And yet they're here plotting extermination of people.
Right. This was their job.
Their job.
That was their job.
And
they didn't stop.
And everybody is not enthusiastic in the beginning, and they're sort of looking for a way out, and in the end they know there's no way out because if they protest too much, they're out.
They're out, exactly. That's the thing that the piece shows, is all that little sort of infighting, all people vying for different positions of power within this structure. That's the thing that makes the film so interesting also, is that you see these very complicated relationships sort of unfold before your eyes and how they change during the course of this hour and a half, and how everybody comes in with their own agenda, their own personal agenda, but also their own sort of political agenda. They have their job to do, and when they come in, they all have these different agendas, and suddenly, by the end, they walk out sort of with the same problems, but they know that they're all under now the aegis of the SS.
Let me turn from this just for a second as we conclude here. What else are you working on? Aren't you making some movie with Sam Mendes? Or
I just did a movie with Sam Mendes, yeah.
Called
The Road to Perdition. That's Tom Hanks and Paul Newman and Jude Law. It was. I was there for a week in Chicago. It was great. Great director.
He is.
Oh, great.
You know him from American Beauty,
Yeah.
primarily a director who came from stage.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Director.
Why is he a great
Cabaret.
director?
He's a good director because he takes his time, and not, and he's not indulgent, and he really focuses on the actors, and he really focuses on the scene. It's like working in a theater, except there just happens to be a camera there. It's great.
Reasonably good actors to work with, too.
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, yeah, not too shabby.
I should say Conspiracy premieres on Saturday, May 19th at 9 p.m. on HBO. It is a powerful piece because, you know, for all those people that think you need lots of, lots of fires and explosions and for drama, all you got to do is watch this, because you will see it'll make you think, it'll make you sick, it'll make you more understanding of history. So Conspiracy premieres on May 19th at 9 p.m. on HBO. Stanley Tucci plays Adolf Eichmann. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.